Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I'm Iain.
And I'm Gary. And today we're taking a look at The Terminator, which came out in 1984, directed by James Cameron. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis for The Terminator?
Well, the story follows Kyle Reese, a soldier from the future who's been sent back through time to protect the mother of the leader of the human resistance. She has been targeted for termination. The Terminator is a Cyberdyne System Model 101 T-800, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is a monumental sort of icon in Hollywood, at the time had only just completed Conan and Conan the Destroyer before coming to work on this small little James Cameron project. The film also stars Linda Hamilton, who plays Sarah Connor, and this is pretty much a breakout role for her. Even though her acting credentials wouldn't go far beyond the Terminator franchise, perhaps a big role in Dante's Peak with Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
The film also stars Michael Biehn, who also has a pretty small film resume when you look at it. If you're looking at leading men, he seems to always play the supporting actor or a bit part. In The Terminator, he plays the time-traveling hero of the film.
Yeah.
However, he's massively overshadowed by The Terminator.
Yeah.
Michael Biehn, of course, would appear in other James Cameron films, The Abyss, and, of course, Aliens.
This film is just groundbreaking. It is timeless. It is every positive, good word you can ever fucking think of in cinema. I mean, if you are watching this review and you're like, I've never seen The Terminator before, then stop watching this review and go and watch it. I remember sitting down on a Saturday night, like I used to when I was younger, watching all these monumental big films on Channel 3, and that opening sequence is just amazing. You know, you've got this just dark, gothic kind of apocalyptic vision of LA 2029. You've got these amazing miniature hunter-killer jets flying around, firing lasers all over the place, and then you just get that wall of text. And for me, out of everything in the Terminator franchise, that wall of text is just memorable. The machines rose from the nuclear fire and go about to exterminate humankind. But the war won't be fought there. It will be fought in the past, tonight.
Well, the present. Their past?
Yeah.
Our present.
Yeah.
Well, it's a miracle the film ever even got made in the first place. James Cameron, I think, was living in his own car at the time of writing the script for the film, which I think sold for $1. Other studios, I think Paramount Studios, were actually interested in getting the license to make the film, but they wanted a different director, so James Cameron, in his own words, said,
"Fuck you, asshole."
This was James Cameron's baby from the get-go, and he had a vision, well, more so, he had a nightmare about a machine rising out of the flames, which is pretty iconic and is actually one of the key scenes in the film, which the original studio, Orion Pictures, wanted to cut from the film. They wanted they just thought it was a schlocky 80s grindhouse action movie with no merits whatsoever. So he was up against the studio executives, but at least he had a friend in Arnold Schwarzenegger who was actually encouraging James Cameron to get this project going because he was interested in the film, even though originally Arnold Schwarzenegger wanted to play Kyle Reese.
Yeah.
However, you could have imagined that things wouldn't have quite worked out, or the film might not have worked if those things had changed. It was also on a budget, I think, about $6 million at most, which is next to nothing. When you look at the special effects in the film, it looks like hundreds of millions. It really does. The music score at the film is also relatively simple, but it's also one of the most iconic and recognized soundtracks in movie history. It's right up there with Star Wars, RoboCop, and Indiana Jones. It's so memorable.
The names, like we said, ticking off the names of the actors in this film, like we said, Arnold Schwarzenegger, what a powerhouse. You can say about his acting credentials further from this film, but his presence, just that opening sequence of him walking around naked with, well, I watched it in the Blu-ray, so you actually do see his dick swinging in the darkness.
Did you have a problem with that, Ian?
I did, actually. I have watched this film a million times and never seen his penis.
Hey, what's wrong with this picture?
And then I watched it in Blu-ray and I get to see it and I'm just like, really?
It's Mr. Olympus right there.
Why would you give a machine a penis? It wouldn't work. But, you know, you have Arnie, you have Michael Biehn, you know, playing Carl Reese. I love the fact that in the first 5-10 minutes of the film, these characters are set. The Terminator kills 3 punks. 2 of them we would recognise. Well, actually, it only
really kills one of them in a really brutal, horrible fashion. Well, you forget how powerful a Terminator is, or it illustrates to you right then when he punches the guy through the stomach, pretty much right up through his rib cage.
Yeah.
I always imagined that he was going to pull out his still beating heart.
Yeah.
But it's just a bloodied hand, and you're just like, God damn. And then, of course, we have Bill Paxton.
Yeah, I love the little Bill Paxton moment. He's got the skid mark on his face, which I just think is awesome.
And I love the fact that they blanked out like a tooth gap as well.
You do not want to fuck with me.
But you've got the Terminator just killing right from the start. And then you flick to Kyle, and Kyle is surviving. You know, I love that whole little bit that he has where he steals the homeless guy's trousers, which I always think is kind of gross because you don't know what the guy's been doing in those trousers.
Kyle Reese must stink.
Oh.
Hey buddy, did you just see a real bright light?
Yeah. But he runs into the store and he's hiding from the police, and I never realized it until I watched this for the review, but he's been hiding from Terminators and machines pretty much his whole life. Hiding from human police officers was kind of like a walk in the park for him.
Well, he says at one point in the film that the Terminators are not too smart.
Yeah.
So that if you're careful, they're easy enough to avoid. Whereas humans, on the other hand, are going to be a little bit more tenacious, and so maybe a little bit more complicated for him. But he still manages to get out of there.
Yeah.
And of course, I love the scene where he grabs that coat, puts it on, and ties the wire shotgun underneath his arm, which he jacks from the police car.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's an awesome scene, and it's totally memorable when he's got the police officer there, takes his gun, and is like,
What day is it? The date?
12 May, Thursday.
What year?
Yeah.
And you just understand his confusion because you've seen the world that he's come from and he's placed in this world. And I got to give him credit because he must have taken some history lessons because he was born in the apocalypse.
Yeah.
He has no idea of police forces, convenience stores, cars, phone books or anything like that. Yeah, he seems pretty adept to his mission straight away.
Yeah, well, like I said, he's been born to survive.
Yeah.
So he's it's not like he's stopping and going, oh look, it's a TV, I'm going to watch this program and find out what's actually happening. He's just like, I need a gun, I need clothes, I need to stay hidden from the sight.
There was actually a deleted scene in the film where the Terminator, when he's trying to find a vehicle, he sees an old lady. And the old lady, frightened of the Terminator, sort of puts the car in reverse and crashes behind her before putting it into drive and taking off.
Yeah.
So when the Terminator gets into a car, he puts it into reverse, crashes it, then puts it into drive and takes off, sort of emulating the behavior that he's seeing, which is kind of cool because the machines wouldn't necessarily know how to drive, 20th century vehicles.
Well, I mean, if you look at it in a way that obviously Skynet has been around for such a long time, it's probably got historical records which is downloaded into...
Yeah, but it's kind of redundant data that it's not every Terminator model's not really going to need.
But would it make the Terminator a bit more stupid if every time he got into a car he reversed it and then drove off on forward?
There are so many behind-the-scenes notes of this film that it's impossible to cover them all. Yeah. But it has gone on record that James Cameron was irate and frustrated with people coming up to him whilst making the film with their little idea of how they can make the Terminator better. And it included scenes like, what if the Terminator started drinking? What would happen to the endoskeleton?
No.
And so cutting out all that cheesy nonsense, save it for the third and fourth movies.
Yeah.
Hi, baby. Yeah, it's me. Listen, I need you to come pick me up. My bike just broke down. I don't care what you're doing. Come and get me. What the?
More?
Hey, got a serious attitude problem.
Linda Hamilton, I love her little appearance as well. She's just so innocent.
Yeah.
Right at the start, driving up on her scooter, she's just trying to do her job, she's trying to support her relationship with her boyfriend and things like that.
I think you can actually give her an age in this film, and that is she's 19. Because
Really?
in the second film, they say that she's 29 and that the events happened 10 years ago. So it's pretty weird when you look at Sarah Connor, she's 19, and you've got Carl Reese, who's perhaps in his late 30s.
Yeah, well, I mean, go back through time. Does he become younger?
No.
Oh, okay. At the same time, I've got to bring up Lance Henriksen.
Yes.
Oh, Lance Henriksen is just such... As big as a star as Arnold Schwarzenegger is, I think Lance Henriksen kind of beats him on the amount of movies that he's been in. And
he was also lined up to play a Terminator when they wanted a sleek, smaller model that would be more intimidating, which eventually would go to... Is it Robert Patrick in the second film?
Yeah, and I just love his little bits every now and again, because he's working with his mate Ed, who is the chief detective, Lieutenant Traxler of the LAPD, and they just get their little conversation piece, like the little coffee sequence.
Our coffee's 2 hours cold. Mm-hmm. I put a cigarette out in it.
And the Lieutenant Traxler's like, oh, I don't care, we're trying to find the phone book killer. It's just all these actors. And the script, and the visuals, and the special effects, and everything. There is just... I find it really hard to find something wrong with this film. Obviously, yes, at the moment we've got, coming up soon, we've got Terminator Genesis, which will possibly change the view, or the timeline, or the story, or whatever they're planning on doing with the Terminator franchise. But as much as people like to hate on, say, Terminator 3 and Terminator Salvation, it's one of those sets of movies that keeps in its core, there's a machine trying to kill John Connor and stop the future, and this is what we are constantly following. There's obviously, you have the family emotional stuff that happens in Terminator 2, but come on, the T-1000 is pretty goddamn awesome. You have the obviously the weird, elaborate time-traveling story of Terminator 3, but I love the fact that in that one, the Terminator is following the orders of Kate Brewster, not John Connor. And then Terminator Salvation, for all the issues they went with that film, it shows us what we wanted to see had led up to the Terminator.
Since we saw the dreams of Carl Reese in the first film of the apocalyptic future, our imaginations went through the roof, because we'd never seen a sci-fi war depicted just like that before.
Yeah.
And of course, James Cameron learned from Roger Corman making schlocky movies actually how to do some special effects, but Cameron managed to bring a gravitas to it that just made them so memorable. And all, as fans, we've ever wanted is to see that apocalyptic war movie.
I do want to bring up, you said in the Running Man movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger had moaned at Paul Michael Glazier that he had no vision of the future.
Yes.
But weirdly enough, our timeline now is more like the Running Man than it is the Terminator. Don't you think that's weird? There's no post-apocalyptic war, it's all just game shows.
It's all just game shows and YouTube chat shows.
The special effects. As brilliant as the acting is, the special effects by Stan Winston are just... what words?
Stan Winston has created some of the most memorable creatures, monsters and effects in cinema history. Stan Winston passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
However, his studio is still churning out some of the greatest pieces of artwork in film history.
Yeah, and the Terminator just emphasizes that, from the flying HKs to those giant tank-like HKs. Carl Reese talks about the T-600s having rubber skin. We wouldn't actually see them until Terminator Salvation, but you can easily spot them. But the fact that you have Arnie, and they took full life model prosthetics of Arnie's head, and yes, okay, we are talking 1984, and they don't, you can see through them now, especially on DVD releases and Blu-ray versions of the film. You know, you're looking at a rubber skinned man, you know, and then it's cutting to Arnie's real face. But spoilers if you haven't seen it, when the skin is completely burnt off and that T-800 steps up from the wreck, I shit myself.
Because typically and commercially, that is the end of the film.
Yeah.
And so with the Terminator coming back for one last gasp, yeah, it's totally memorable, and we've never seen a robot portrayed or illustrated like that in a film.
Yeah.
We're used to seeing, you know, campy robots.
Yeah.
Of even the Cylons.
Men in rubber suits and stuff like that.
Exactly. So seeing this stop motion miniature, as well as live set pieces, just Stan Winston and James Cameron brought the Terminator to life. And James Cameron always said, this film isn't about its heroes, it's about the Terminator. Yeah, no expense was spared in creating that effect.
The dialogue as well. I mean, when we're following Kyle and Sarah and the Terminator, there are long sequences of just there's tiny little bits of dialogue here and now and then, like in the gun store when Arnie goes in and he's talking about all the different weapons.
Anything else?
Phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range.
Hey, just what you see, pal.
That scene's awesome. And then obviously you have the quietness of Kyle walking around, like you said, you know, he's sawing off the shotgun and getting himself prepared. They're both hunting down Sarah. Sarah's going through her little relationship issues. But when it all kicks off, and it absolutely does, you're still kind of shocked. You know, you're unsure of actually what's going on. I love the explanation that Kyle gives to Sarah when they're sat in the car hiding from the Terminator. Because there's no footage over it. You know, you're literally taking Kyle's word on something that, as Sarah says, hasn't even happened yet. It's improbable. It's the future. But you've technically seen it. So you are believing every word that this man is saying.
Well, I like the fact that she doesn't take it all at face value. She thinks he's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Because you can only imagine having a conversation with someone who says, "Yeah, I'm from the future and I'm here to protect you from this machine that was also sent from the future to kill you, to prevent your unborn son from rising up and leading the resistance."
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
It's just like, okay.
Yeah.
And I like the Dr. Silverman character, who gets a small appearance in this film before he has a bigger role in the second one. And he just like, I'm going to make a career out of this. He's just totally fascinated with the story and the believability that the characters give in their performances when they're telling them that this is what's going to happen in the future, and it becomes laughable as soon as you look at it.
Yeah, that's another brilliant scene as well, where Dr. Silverman is quizzing Kyle, and Kyle was just going through all the details, the force that he was being led by Perry, you know, the time that he's been fighting, the different types of machines that they've been fighting, and then Kyle was just like, "Why am I talking to you? You are nobody. Give me Sarah. I need to protect her." And then it ultimately builds up to one of the most memorable scenes in cinematic history, the police station shootout. Well, I wouldn't even call it a shootout. It's a massacre.
Absolutely. Rivaled perhaps only by the Maniac Cop sequence, which only really imitates this one.
Yeah.
Now, of course, this scene starts with the Terminator walks in and he's asking for Sarah. He's like, "Yeah, I'm a friend." And he's told to wait around.
Yeah.
And he gives the legendary line,
"I'll be back."
But it wasn't originally going to be that. Arnold Schwarzenegger was like, "I have been taking English classes, and the proper way to say this is, I will be back."
Yeah.
And he's like, and he's a robot, so the robot should be perfectly fluent in its English, and that's what he should say. And Cameron was like, "No, I wrote, I'll be back. That's how you'll deliver it." And you could only imagine that catchphrase might not have even existed
Yeah.
if Arnie had had his way.
God, just think of how many Arnie movies would be missing that line if
Exactly.
he hadn't said it.
And of course that turns into the most ridiculous gun shootout scene I think I'd ever seen. But this goes down to Arnie's training, because the film was postponed just a few months or weeks even, so that Arnie could go and do some gun training, and he spent days at the gun range practicing using handguns, shotguns, Uzis, and then also learning to ambidextrously fire them with both hands, which of course most people wouldn't be able to. They'd tear their arms off.
Yeah.
But you're looking at Arnie here, and so he's capable. And I think a gun magazine actually quoted as saying that it's the most accurate representation of guns being used in a movie to date. It's like, wow, But that just adds to the Terminator's veracity in the way that he just executes all of these police officers.
Yeah.
And I'm watching these police officers, and I'm like, they're hearing all these gunshots, and they step around a corner and go bop bop. And I'm like, get some cover. These police officers hardly take any cover, and they get annihilated, and they absolutely look like imbeciles.
Well, I think it's more on the lines of they are ill prepared.
Yeah.
Literally, when has somebody ever driven a police car straight into the reception area and then just started mowing people down? Even if he was high on drugs and was human, he'd have at least ran at some point before the other police officers. The Terminator doesn't care. He's just going to lay waste to the place, and he will kill everybody.
And he does. He offs Lieutenant Traxler, and he also offs Lance Henriksen. There was a deleted scene where Kyle and Sarah come across Lieutenant Traxler, and he actually gives Sarah and Kyle the weapons that he was carrying, and goes, "I believe you, protect Sarah," which I think would have actually been a really nice scene, because he all along was you get a sense that he was believing Kyle, whereas the rest were making a mockery of it.
Yeah.
But from this point on, the chase continues. Now, I would say that the chase moment started right from the get-go when the two of them teleport in from the future. It's a chase movie from start to very finish. However, there is one lull in the chase sequence, which is prior to Kyle and Sarah being at the police station, where they're in a car, they crash up, they've shot the Terminator a little bit, the police are right outside, and the Terminator disappears.
Yeah.
He gets out of the car and runs off. I'm like, okay... The explanation for that is that the Terminator needs to go and repair his eye and repair his arm. And I was like, okay, so is he doing that to remain incognito? So that no one recognizes that he's a Terminator? But I'm like, but that doesn't stop him later on.
Walking into a police station.
He could have got out of that car while Sarah and Kyle were stuck in the wreck and just finished it there and then. But he runs completely off the set. It's the only thing that bugs me in the film.
But I got a second one that bugs me. Is that when Arnie climbs into that apartment and is repairing himself, which is another phenomenal scene, like we said, Stan Winston and the special effects. He opens up his arm and he's fixing the mechanics inside. Then it cuts to the police station and it cuts back to Arnie and he's dealing with his eye. But he's bandaged his arm. Why would a machine bandage its arm? There's no heart to pump the blood around to help him heal. If he's going to stay incognito, why does he walk into a police station and lay waste to 30-odd people? Nobody's going to stop him. For me personally, it was just a way of Cameron saying, look, we can't show the effects of your arm because of budgetary restraints. We're just going to shove bandages around it. But I'm just like, the Terminator literally sat there like, I better make sure that this is neat. Somebody might notice.
It's very thorough.
Yeah. The dream sequences and flashbacks as well, do not feel disjointed. In a lot of films, they can jump back and forth and you kind of feel like you're going all over the place and get confused.
But for me, it cements where Kyle Reese has come from.
Yeah.
It gives you a clear understanding of what it is he's trying to prevent or to make sure that humankind prevails. Because when you're dealing with time travel, it's so easy then to create paradoxes.
Yeah.
Of course, it's like, so Has this already happened before? Does the John Connor of the future already aware of this? Has it already happened, so he already knew that you have to send someone back?
Yeah.
And of course, there is another deleted scene in the Terminator where Sarah Connor's like, "Oh, I found this company called Cyberdyne. Maybe we should blow them up." Of course, that was cut, and all of these ideas were lifted, just like other ideas that were unused for the film for the second film.
Yeah.
But the special effects, the future war is brilliant for creating the Kyle Reese character. And I love the fact that when he does come back, you can see that he's got burn scars, he's got laser burns, and he's battle worn. And I love all of the little attentions to detail on Michael Bihn's character.
I love that sequence at the beginning. Like I said, it doesn't feel disjointed when he's broken into the car and he's trying to get it started, and he looks over and he sees the crane, and you sat there and you're wondering for a moment, like, why are you staring at the crane so much? And then he kind of flashbacks to the future, and the crane then turns into the big tank. And like I said, it doesn't feel disjointed. You're just like,
for him, that was yesterday.
Yeah, for him, it's yesterday. It's a memory. You're not going over the place. You're following him, and then it jumps back because he's just woken up. He's had a memory of what he was doing the day before, or the hour before, whatever the time travel works out.
Here's just a little bit of trivia for you relating to James Cameron and Michael Biehn.
Yeah.
Is that in every time the two of them together, Michael Biehn gets bitten on the hand. In Terminator, Sarah's biting on his hand to break free.
Yeah.
In Aliens, I think it's Newt who bites him in the vents.
Yeah.
And in The Abyss, he also gets bitten on the hand. It's like a weird little trivia for you.
Another weird trivia as well is, as much as we want to praise James Cameron for this movie, he actually stole the idea.
What? James Cameron stole the idea for a movie?
I know, it's shocking, isn't it? Taking an idea and just expanding it from somebody else. I never realised this. I was reading up on the notes for the background, and
Harlan Ellison is one of the biggest names in he's a big name in science fiction. He wrote there's so much of his work is out there, including work on Star Trek and The Outer Limits.
Yeah.
Mainly so is that there are 2 episodes of The Outer Limits. There's The Soldier and Demon with a Glass Hand. And they both deal pretty much with future people coming back to the present, including robots to wipe out mankind in the present. And of course, James Cameron actually said that his influences for the Terminator came from Mad Max 2 The Road Warrior. He doesn't really go around talking about The Outer Limits that much, although some magazines have quoted him as saying he saw snippets of Outer Limits and got the idea.
Well, I think what might have happened, obviously on a personal level, they're probably never really going to admit this, but I believe that James Cameron probably was watching an episode of The Outer Limits while he was going through this crazy, fever dream sequence that he had, and obviously, you sometimes you do get ideas from an original place, but you do just expand on it. At the same time, if he had done that, he could have just admitted and said, look, I got some of the ideas for this from this episode. Not all of it, some. It's like what we said about Jaws. Jaws is Steven Spielberg's absolute blockbuster, but he kind of took it from the 1950s monster movies going around, It happens all the time. It just surprised me that for many, many years I've always praised James Cameron for what he did with the Terminator franchise.
As an original idea.
And then realised that he got it from an Outer Limits episode, and I was like,
Get out.
The whole film is totally memorable. It's almost impossible to choose individual one favourite scene above all of them, but I'm going to go with the tech noir.
I love that set.
That set piece, I just love the punk rocker sort of vibe from it. I love the pop music that's coming out of it. Even the sort of retro 80s dancing is fun to look at. But it's a tense scene. Sarah Connor's aware that 2 other Sarah Connors have been shot and murdered.
Yeah.
that she's next in the phone book, and she's trying to get hold of the police, she's trying to get hold of her friend, and she's seen Kyle Reese following her, and so she's like, right, I'm going to go into this club, and when she's there, she notices that Kyle Reese is now in the club as well, and she's trying to hide, and I love the scene when she just dips down when the Terminator's just passing over. The music's great, and then all of a sudden the music, it starts to go into slow motion, and we get this really industrial, tense piece of music coming in, and then the slow-mo and the action is instantly back to normal as soon as the gunshots are fired. Yeah. And for me, that is when the chase is on for the rest of the film. And the rest of the film is a chase movie. It is an action, sci-fi action movie. However, I would also say that it is essentially a horror movie at the same time. It was originally intended that this film would just be a horror movie.
Yeah.
But because of the amount of brilliant sci-fi and the action that's in there, you kind of forget about the horror elements to it.
I also think it's a really good tragic love story.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to say, is that this is a love story. At the heart of the story, we follow Kyle Reese, who talks about, it's a little bit weird that he keeps a picture of Sarah Connor with him, and he's always been told since he's grown up that she was the mother of the resistance because of John Connor, and he sort of secretly falls in love with her, never really knowing that he'd be the one to go back to meet her, that would eventually spawn John Connor.
Well, he volunteered.
But he didn't know that until they found the time displacement, and then he didn't really have much time to decide.
But in a weird way, John always knew. This is obviously why I kind of enjoyed Terminator Salvation, because John in the future is looking for Kyle. Yeah. Even though he already knows that Kyle is dead. Yeah. You know, he's looking for Kyle in the future because he needs to send Kyle back. He can't, every time it comes up, this is why obviously it creates a paradox, he cannot send anybody else back. No. He has to find Kyle Reese. He has to keep Kyle alive, and he has to send him back. So all those little things, you know, when Kyle says, oh, I've kept a picture of you, it was given to him by John. Yes. Because he knew that you need to know my mother, you need to recognize her. I know you're going to fall in love with her. I know you're going to go back and weirdly have sex with her and make me. So. But
it's the fact that when he has the picture throughout, I mean, we don't see any of this, but he just says that when he has the picture of it and he's always looking at her and he's always wondering what she's thinking. Yeah. It touches your heart when you know that when the picture is taken of her, she's thinking of him. Yeah. And so throughout time, they're thinking of each other. And even though they may have only made love the once, she does say that it was a lifetime's worth. And it just chokes you up. It does. You forget that how much of a good love story is embedded in this horror action sci-fi.
Yeah, you try and be a man about it, but...
Here's another thing, that if you are a fan of James Cameron, you'll notice that that's there in every film he does. In Titanic, it's a love story, but it's about a doomed ship. Yeah, yeah. In The Abyss, it's about making contact with an alien race, but at the same time, it's about this couple that are not divorced yet, but fall back in love again. You have Avatar, same thing again. It's across alien species. Maybe not so much in the Terminator 2, but there's always a love story embedded within it. And maybe Terminator 2, it's with John in the Terminator, but not on it's on a different level. Yeah. But James Cameron always has that love interest in there, and that is what I think always makes his films so universally acceptable by so many people, because it has characters you can relate to. Yeah. Despite the magic that's going on around them.
Yeah. So amazing. So amazing.
Your favourite scene, Ian?
My favourite scenes, I'm gonna, like Gary said, the whole film is just one memorable scene, but I'm gonna avoid doing the obvious ones, you know, the I'll be back sequence and the T-800 chase sequence at the end. Two of my favourite sequences from this film. The first is the dream sequence in the tunnel just after the police station attack. Kyle and Sarah have nestled down in this tunnel, and she's asking him to talk to her because she's cold. And so he starts talking to her about where he's from and stuff that he go through. And it's just an amazing little sequence where, like I said, it's the same sequence actually where he's got the picture, but he walks back to his hidden underground base place, and he's looking at the picture, and then you see the Terminator, or a different style of Terminator come in, and it's got that big massive cannon, and it's laying waste to the place, and then you see the two red eyes walking through the darkness. I just love that, because it kind of emphasizes to you that, you know, this is the horror that Carl was trying to avoid. You know, none of us are safe unless Sarah lives. It's just absolutely brilliant. And one other sequence is the sequence where, just after that dream sequence, they've gotten to a motel, and Kyle has gone out for supplies to make pipe bombs to help defend against the Terminator, and Sarah has kind of let her guard down to ring her mother. And now, we've already seen the Terminator reading through a notebook that he's stolen from Sarah, and he's found her mother's address. And I just love the way that Sarah's on the phone, and you can hear her talking to her mother, and you're all fine. And then it cuts, and the camera pans this dark room, and the door has been smashed open, and stuff has been knocked all over the place. And then you see the Terminator sat there with the phone, mimicking her mother's voice. We'd already seen him mimic a police officer's voice earlier on in the movie, but it's just so off-putting that she's putting all her faith into this person, like, oh mum, oh yeah, I'm safe, don't worry, okay, I will give you my phone number. And the way the Terminator's just playing on the emotion, oh, tell me, Sarah, where you are, I want to make sure you're safe. And then he hangs up the phone, he's like, give me your address there. Yeah. It's just like, no.
I love you too, sweetheart.
But I love the fact that Sarah's reaction when she gets off the phone, you can almost tell that she's aware that it wasn't quite right, something wrong about that phone call.
Yeah, brilliant. I highly, probably more highly than any of the other films that we have reviewed for this for off the shelf reviews, I highly recommend The Terminator if you have never seen it. If you have seen it, then everything that we have talked about you already know, and you probably have your good points and your bad points about this film anyway. But for those of you who have never seen it, get a copy. Yes, okay, you might not be a sci-fi fan, but like we said, there's a tragic love story at the heart of it. You may not like the acting of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but the special effects by Stan Winston are absolutely brilliant. You may not like anything by James Cameron. Well, then, go away. But for those of you who have never seen it, watch The Terminator. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Once you've watched The Terminator, you can marvel at everything that film accomplished on such a low budget. I mean, just one more little bit of trivia for you is that they didn't always have licenses to film on the sets that they were in. The very last shot of the film has Sarah Connor driving down the motorway.
Yeah.
As they were doing that, police turned up and asked them if they had a license in order to shoot on this property. And they just lied to the police going, oh, yeah, we've got all this sorted. It's a technical marvel that the film got made. And when they released the film, there was no advertising for it. Because the studio thought that it was a dog shit film. They thought it was just a schlocky action horror film, and it was almost buried. But word of mouth got out there, and people kept coming back to see this film. And of course, the Terminator legacy lives on and on and on. It has, 3 sequels?
Yeah.
It's about to get a 4th. There's likely to be even more after that.
There's
been toys, video games, parodies. It's just, the phenomenon of Terminator cannot stop. And it all started right here in 1984 with The Terminator. You definitely have to see it. If you have seen it, you definitely have to watch it again. Why? Because it's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.